Good afternoon, and at the outset I'd like to thank Arup for inviting me to his session. My topic is pretty dry, no interesting videos to show, but I do believe that it's a very important aspect of cataract surgery. These are my financial disclosures of not much relevance to the subject matter of this particular session. We all need to realize as cataract and refractive surgeons that cornea and the ocular surface is the first and the largest refractive surface. It's not the cornea, it's not the lens, but it's basically the tear film that is there, which is the largest refractive surface. A smooth, healthy ocular surface is extremely vital for optimal ocular optics, and visual acuity and quality of vision all start with the tear film. It's estimated that the prevalence of dry eye, initially about a decade back, I thought it was all hype created by the pharmaceutical companies, but truly it has been well established. Depending upon the subset of population that you're examining, the prevalence is as high as 1/3 of the population. And as we age, the incidence increases. At least 50% of the patients who present for cataract surgery have prior problem. Is it 10 minutes? Or
about 8 minutes. Right?
Oh, okay. The reasons for ocular surface disease developing cataract surgery is because of the aged population we deal with, the corneal nerves getting disrupted because the incisions that we make, the profusion of antibiotics, NSAIDs and steroids that we instill in the eye, frequent installation of topical anesthetics, the preservatives in these, as well as the inflammation that often goes with a cataract surgery. Even the simple process of rubbing on the conjunctiva just to dry it up is supposed to take away goblet cells and significantly deteriorate the quality of the tear film that is there. Apart from that, the other factors are the microscopic light. It is not only deleterious to the retina. In a prolonged surgery, it can cause deterioration of the quality of the tear film also. Those involved in outdoor activity, excessive computer usage, diabetics, those who already have a history of contact lens intolerance, are again patients who are predisposed to this particular problem. It was considered that essentially the nerve fibers entered along the long ciliary nerves at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, but now it's completely established that they enter radially in almost all the quadrants. So irrespective of the quadrant where you are making the incision, there are going to be some corneal nerve fibers that are getting affected, and essentially they form a plexus just under the epithelium once they perforate up through the Bowman's membrane. And basically wherever you do the incision, the nerves are going to be affected. So it's whether clear corneal surgery, we all know that we make about a 3 millimeter central incision, 1 millimeter for the side ports, usually 2 of them, and whenever you're trying to address astigmatism, there's a significant amount clock hours of the cornea that gets cut at the periphery, and obviously there's a significant damage to the corneal nerves that occur. So it has been well established that irrespective of whether the incision is on the cornea or even on the sclera, you might think that it stands to reason that if it's a corneal incision, more nerve fibers are going to affect it. It's been well established that even scleral fibers have, scleral incisions have an equally deleterious effect. Grooved incision instead of a direct entry into the cornea is supposed to be causing more damage to the corneal nerve fibers, and naturally longer the incision, greater the impact, and that's the reason maybe the smaller phaco incisions are more cataract, more patient friendly than the larger ECC incisions. One of the reasons that once these corneal nerve fibers get affected is because the autonomic nervous system, the relay to the brain is affected, and because of which the tear secretion, not just the quantity as well as the quality, gets affected, and obviously this takes up to 3 months and some in a few cases even if to a couple of years. So when do you say there is a problem preoperatively as well as postoperatively? Surmer's test, we all know the fallacies of this particular test, but because of the ease with which it can be done, it's often done, and less than 10 millimeters puts you on guard. The tear breakup time, easily done on the slit lamp during a casual examination, less than 10 seconds. Low height of the lacrimal lake, if fluorescein staining, Lissamin green staining, I'm just rushing through these slides. Obviously, we all know the details. Should tell you that we might be dealing with a compromised ocular surface. This is just to show you that even now, subsequent to a modern day well-done phacoemulsification, the tear breakup time considerably drops down. And this is an average. The numbers might exactly vary, but I come across various presentations in literature which shows that invariably the tear breakup time drops down, and that's the reason you need to deal with this. We often come across these patients where we feel we have done excellent surgery. The refractive lane tells you the corrected visual acuity is 6.6 N6, but dryness, burning, ocular irritation, foreign body sensation, photophobia, fatigue, and there's increased mucus and matter in the conjunctival secretions. Often all of us do operate on patients with 6.9 pass visual acuity. Some of them for no reason, what we believe is no fault of ours, end up saying that I was better off before the surgery. This is obviously something which is very disconcerting for us surgeons, and we need to deal with that. When do you think, apart from those tests that I mentioned, the visual symptoms that the patients have, if the uncorrected visual acuity, your optometrist writes down 6.6 N6, the patient is complaining of quality of vision. Vision fluctuates from morning to evening, decrease in clarity of vision, and all these things. And whenever you're using a premium intraocular lens, as we all know, multifocal intraocular lens, invariably there's a drop in the contrast sensitivity, and we have a compromised ocular surface. The two things add on to each other. This is the kind of, you might get, as far as the simulated E is concerned, as far as the aberrations are concerned, this might be the picture that you see. The corneal topography itself is quite irregular, and what the patient perceives is something that's quite smudgy. It may be a little difficult to discriminate between higher order aberrations, the problems caused by the ocular surface disease, but then when you look at the topography, then that might become evident. Again, the patients might complain of symptoms becoming worse in evening, in winter times, in low humidity. Most of us are in air-conditioned environment, and prolonged usage of computers obviously exaggerates this. This is, you might be dealing with the corneal topography, and whenever you get an irregular topographic picture like this, where it doesn't fit into a particular picture, and the topography varies morning to evening from time to time, that immediately tells you that there is something wrong with the ocular surface. Two things which go hand in hand and which significantly deteriorates the condition is the presence of squamous blepharitis and meibomianitis. These are very common in the elderly age group, and this needs to be dealt with quite adequately. Any amount of instilling teardrops in the eye is not going to take care of this unless these two chronic conditions are adequately treated, and there's enough modalities of treatment, chronic treatment that's available for this. So attending, what is the treatment modalities that I'll be mentioning? But treating blepharitis, meibomian gland disease, usage of non-preserved lubricants, stop other medications. Essentially, many of these patients get excessive medication. That's the reason some of these symptoms become obvious. Patients start complaining 1 month after the cataract surgery. But whenever it's accompanied by inflammation, judicious use of cyclosporin and weak steroids. I routinely put all my patients only on loteprednol. We do not use prednisolone acetate, and I think it's equally effective. That's what we do routinely. And wherever you are feeling the condition extreme, putting in omega-3 fatty acids might also help. Extreme, do not rush to punctal plugs, though it's often talked about in the Western literature. I do believe that with the prior measures, most of these patients can be adequately dealt with. I'm not going to take time with dealing with the various tear substitutes that are available. So when you go ahead with that traditional tears, then maybe the action is quite short-lived. Sometimes we end up saying that put it every hourly. Patients find it quite cumbersome. Usually they are not compliant with these. And again, the preservatives with that itself could be deleterious. In this case, the carboxymethyl cellulose has a distinct advantage. There are special CMC binding sites, and because of the higher binding and because of the regular coating that it forms on the surface, maybe less frequency of application and greater effect is what you often come across. The message I want to leave behind is that looking at the ocular surface prior to the surgery, post-operatively, extremely important, and a healthy ocular surface gives you the best chance for success of whatever IOL technology we use. We may refract through the lens, but we see through the ocular film, and it's necessary that we take care of that appropriately. Thank you so much for your kind attention.